Hello, welcome to the Bible Made Easy for Kids reading by Dave Strahler. Today is day 41 of the reading and day 40 of Lent. And
no, it's not.
yes, it is.
It's 57 for me. It's 58 for me.
Like 58 for you because you've been working for 58 days. Oh no, wait. Technically, you should be on page 80 of that book.
There's now page 80.
Exactly. Because if we're on day 40, you would be
It's
in.
the last day.
No, I have to go. I have a few days left
Mom,
to
what's
read.
the last day of Lent?
The 30th,
The 30th. What's today?
the 24th.
The 24th?
There's still 6 more days after this.
No.
6 more days of Lent.
But I still want to.
On the last day, we will read 3 pages. But to start off, we are going to be starting on page 325. Paul on trial. But the son of Paul's sister heard about the plot and went to the barracks where Paul was being kept. When the commander heard about it, he ordered Paul to be taken secretly to Caesarea. So at 9 o'clock that night, Paul was safely escorted by 200 soldiers, 200 spearmen, and 70 men on horses. The commander also sent a letter to Governor Felix, telling him he could not find anything that Paul had done to deserve death or prison. Paul on trial before Felix. A few days later, the high priest Ananias went down to Caesarea to bring the charges against Paul before the governor. He accused Paul of being a troublemaker who stirred up riots among the Jewish people. Paul defended himself by telling Felix that his accusers never found him arguing with anyone in the temple, not stirring up a riot in any synagogue or on the streets of the city. After Paul had defended himself, Felix ordered that he be guarded, yet have enough freedom so that his friends could visit him. 2 years passed, and Porcius Festus took over from Felix as the new governor. But because Felix wanted to gain favor with the Jewish people, he did not release Paul. Paul on trial before Festus. 3 days after Festus arrived in Caesarea to take over, he went up to Jerusalem. There he was met by the chief priest and Jewish leaders, who asked him a special favor, to transfer Paul to Jerusalem, for they were preparing an ambush to kill him along the way. But Festus replied that Paul was at Caesarea and he himself would be returning there soon. Paul before King Agrippa. After 10 days, when Festus came back to Caesarea, he had Paul brought before him. The Jews who had come from Jerusalem accused him of many things, but Paul declared that he had done nothing wrong against the Jewish law or against Caesar. Festus wanted to please the Jews, but asked Paul whether he'd be willing to be tried in Jerusalem. But Paul insisted that he was innocent and asked to be heard by Caesar, the Roman emperor, so that his case could be judged fairly. Paul before Agrippa. A few days later, King Agrippa and Bernice came to visit Festus. Agrippa was told about Paul's case and wanted to hear for himself what Paul had to say. So Paul was brought before him and allowed to speak. Paul told the king about his life and all that had happened, now how Jesus had appeared to him and sent him to spread the good news among the Gentiles. Then Paul said to King Agrippa, "Do you believe the prophets? I know you do." But Agrippa replied, Do you think you can persuade me by becoming a Christian to become a Christian so quickly?" Then he and others who were gathered there stood up and left the room. As they went out, they talked it over and agreed, "This man hasn't done anything to deserve death or imprisonment." Then Agrippa said to Festus, "He could have been set free if he had not appealed to Caesar." Paul sails for Rome. Because Paul had been appealed to Caesar, he and other prisoners were put on a ship that would sail to Italy. Paul was handed over to the centurion named Julius and set sail for the port at Sidon. The wind was against them, and they made slow progress. They sailed along the coast of Crete and landed at a place called Fair Havens. They had lost much time, and sailing was dangerous. Paul warned them not to continue sailing from there, but the centurion took the advice of the ship's captain instead of listening to Paul. And when a gentle wind started to blow, they continued sailing along the coast of Crete. But soon a powerful wind blew from the island. The sailors couldn't turn the ship into the wind, so they gave up and let the ship be driven along by the gale. Then the soldiers tied ropes around the hull of the ships to hold it together. They were afraid of being driven across the sandbars. Sandbars of Syrtis, off the African coast. So they lowered the anchor to slow the ship. The next day, the strong winds continued to battle their ship, so the men began to throw cargo overboard. The terrible storm raged for many days, blotting out the sun and the stars. Eventually, the men gave up all hope of being saved. No one had eaten for a long time. Finally, Paul called the crew together and said, "Men, you should have followed my advice not to sail from Crete. You would have avoided the damage and loss. But take courage. None of you will lose your lives, even though the ship will go down. I know this because an angel from God, to whom I belong and whom I serve, stood by me last night and said, 'Do not be afraid, Paul, for you will surely stand trial before Caesar.' What's more, God, in his goodness, for 2 whole years, Paul stayed in his own rented house in Rome and welcomed all who came to see him. He spread the message about God's kingdom, and no one tried to stop him." Paul's hardships. Below is a list of things Paul had gone through by the time he wrote his second letter to the Corinthians. This is what he told them. 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and day in the open sea. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my own countrymen, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, and in danger at the sea, and in danger from false brothers. I have labored and toiled and have gone often without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst and have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. Besides everything else, I face daily the pressure of my own concern for all the churches. And yet Paul said, "I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties, for I am weak. For when I am weak, then I am strong." Thank you so much for listening to my part of the Bible Made Easy for Kids reading. by Dave Strahler. My sister will be doing how many Bible verses, Rain? Rain?
8.
Have you done 8 yet? She will come back to you when yes, she's doing 8 Bible verses today. So when she's done with that, she'll show you them.
You will have trouble, but take courage. And now I have overcome the world. John 16:33. The rest of God is all fun and good. Thank you, Mary. And the second Bible verse is the heavens declare the glory of God.
Sky.
The sky proclaims the work of his hands. Psalm 19:1. The third Bible verse of today, page 68. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Hebrews 13:8. And our Bible verse of today on page 1. The prayer of a righteous, the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. James 5:16. That's all for today. I hope you guys have a good day. See you tomorrow. Bye.